The unexpected challenge. Lily had never imagined herself in a place like this. The air was thick with the smell of alien metal, and the ground beneath her feet felt unnaturally cold. She was on a strange, foreign world, light years away from Earth. Her hands trembled as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. How did she get here? What was she supposed to do? The giant, towering aliens surrounding her laughed. Their sharp, silver eyes glinted with amusement as they stared down at her. This tiny human girl, so small and fragile compared to their mighty forms. The aliens were massive, standing at least 10 feet tall, with tough, armored skin that looked almost indestructible. Their muscles bulged, and their weapons were sleek, deadly-looking tools. They were warriors, strong, proud, and feared across the galaxy. And they were about to have a little fun with the scrawny human they had captured. Lily was no warrior. She had never been in a fight before, never dreamed she would ever be in a place like this. She wasn't big, strong, or tough. In fact, she had always been the smallest girl in every class, the one who struggled to keep up with others. But she wasn't going to let these aliens see how scared she was. No, she wasn't going to let them think they could just walk all over her. The alien leader stepped forward. He was the largest of them all, towering over Lily, his eyes glowing a deep, dangerous red. His voice rumbled like thunder as he spoke. "So this is the human they sent us, a little girl." He laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed in the arena. The other aliens joined in, their laughter ringing in Lily's ears. Lily felt her stomach twist with nerves. She had no idea what was going on, or why they had captured her. The aliens clearly thought she was nothing more than an easy target. But something inside her, some flicker of defiance, sparked to life. She wasn't going to let them treat her like this. She wasn't just going to let them win. The alien leader gestured to the side. "Prepare her for the challenge," he ordered, his voice cold and commanding. Before she could react, two of the aliens stepped forward, grabbing her arms with their powerful, clawed hands. They weren't gentle. They dragged her across the cold stone ground, toward a platform in the center of the arena. The crowd of aliens watched silently, their eyes glowing with anticipation. Lily's heart pounded in her chest, and her breath caught in her throat. She was terrified. What was she supposed to do? She wasn't prepared for any of this. Her mind raced, trying to come up with a plan, but she couldn't think clearly. All she knew was that she had to survive. She had to fight. The aliens threw her onto the platform. It was cold, slick, and uneven, the perfect stage for a battle. In the center of the arena stood a massive, robotic creature, twice her size, with sharp, metallic limbs and glowing red eyes. It was designed to test the strength and skills of the beings who dared face it. And now she was going to fight it. The alien leader's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. "This is your challenge, human. Defeat the creature, and you may live. Fail, and your fate will be sealed." Lily swallowed hard. This was it. Her heart raced as she stood tall, trying to ignore the fear clawing at her chest. The robotic creature stared at her, its eyes glowing brighter, and it made a low mechanical hum as it prepared for battle. "You're nothing but a weak little girl," the alien leader taunted. "How could you possibly win against this? It's stronger, faster, and far more dangerous than you'll ever be." Lily's fists clenched. She didn't have time to think about how big or strong the creature was. All she had was her mind, her quick thinking, and her will to survive. She knew she didn't have the power or strength the aliens had, but maybe she didn't need it. She had something else, resourcefulness, and she wasn't about to give up without trying everything she had. She took a deep breath and tried to calm her nerves. She had to focus. She looked at the creature, studying its movements, its patterns. She watched as it shifted its weight and raised its sharp metallic claws. The crowd of aliens watched in silence, waiting for her to fail. They were all so sure she would lose. They had seen human weakness before. They knew what would happen next. But Lily wasn't going to let that happen. Not today. The robot lunged at her, its claws reaching for her. The crowd held its breath, thinking she would be crushed in an instant. But Lily didn't panic. She darted to the side, barely avoiding the attack. She had no plan except to keep moving, keep dodging, keep looking for an opening. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her focus sharp. The robot turned, its eyes narrowing. It attacked again, faster this time. But Lily was ready. She ducked and dodged, narrowly missing the strike. Her movements were quick, precise, and she could feel the adrenaline surging through her body. The crowd gasped. They hadn't expected this. The little human girl was still alive, still standing. Lily could hear the alien leader's voice, though it was muffled by the ringing in her ears. "Impressive," he muttered. "But it won't last. You can't outrun it forever." But Lily wasn't trying to outrun the robot. She was looking for a weakness, something she could use to her advantage. She wasn't the strongest, but she had the one thing the robot didn't, the ability to think fast and use her surroundings. The arena was full of obstacles, rocks, jagged metal spikes, and broken pieces of debris from past battles. If she could use them to her advantage, she might just have a chance. As the robot lunged again, Lily dove under its massive arm, rolling toward a pile of broken metal. The robot turned quickly, but Lily was already climbing, looking for something, anything that could help her. The crowd was silent now. The aliens didn't know what to make of this tiny human girl who refused to back down. And that was when Lily realized it. She wasn't just fighting the robot. She was fighting for her life, and she would do whatever it took to survive. Underestimating the human. The robotic creature shifted its weight, its sharp metallic limbs scraping against the ground. The crowd of aliens buzzed with excitement, clearly expecting the human girl to crumble. But Lily wasn't done yet. She had narrowly avoided the last strike, but she knew this wouldn't be easy. The robot was relentless, and it wouldn't tire. But what if she could make it tire? What if she could outsmart it instead of outfight it? Lily's mind raced. She glanced around quickly, taking in the jagged landscape of the arena. It was a maze of broken metal, sharp rocks, and high platforms. She could use that. She wasn't going to beat the robot in a straight fight, but she could use the environment to her advantage. It wasn't strength that mattered now. It was strategy. The robot made another lunge, its claws extending like razors toward her. She ducked and rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding its deadly strike. Her heart was racing, but she forced herself to stay calm. Each time the robot missed, it made a loud mechanical hiss of frustration. It was fast, but not perfect. Lily's eyes flickered to the high ledge just to her left. It was a risky move, but if she could climb up there, she'd have the height advantage and a clear view of the robot's movements. She didn't waste time thinking about it. She took a leap of faith. With a burst of adrenaline, she sprinted toward the ledge, the robot following closely behind. Its heavy steps shook the ground, and Lily could hear the whirring of its gears as it adjusted its position. But she was quick. As the robot reached for her, she dove for the edge, grabbing hold of a sharp piece of metal jutting out from the ledge. The crowd gasped. They had expected the robot to catch her, to squash her like a bug. Instead, they saw her climbing with the agility of someone who had spent years in the shadows, waiting for her moment. The alien leader scowled, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Lily didn't look down. She couldn't afford to. Her hands burned as she pulled herself up the ledge, her muscles screaming in protest. Every movement had to be precise. The robot, following her every move, was already trying to adjust its position to climb after her. But Lily had one thing it didn't: flexibility. She reached the top and quickly scrambled to her feet. The arena below was a blur, but she could hear the heavy, mechanical footsteps of the robot as it tried to scale the wall. It was close now, so close that Lily could almost feel its hot breath on her neck. But instead of freezing in fear, Lily's focus sharpened. She scanned the area for anything she could use. There, an old rusty pipe hanging precariously from the wall, just above the robot's head. It was hanging by a thin chain, but it would be enough. If she could cut it loose, the pipe would fall directly onto the robot's head, distracting it long enough for her to make her next move. The crowd roared in anticipation, unsure whether she could pull it off. The alien leader's smirk returned. He was confident that she would fail. She had no weapons, no power. She was just a weak human girl. There was no way she could win. Lily knew what they thought. They thought she was small, weak, that she couldn't match them. But they didn't know what it meant to be human. They didn't know about the power that came from surviving against all odds. She swung herself across the ledge, reaching for the pipe. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal, and with a quick tug, she pulled it free. The pipe fell, and with a loud clang, it struck the robot on the head. For a moment, everything went silent. The robot stumbled, disoriented from the blow. Sparks flew from its head as the pipe caused a short circuit, and the once imposing creature faltered in its steps. It tried to recover, but the damage had been done. It was no longer the same unstoppable force it once was. The crowd of aliens gasped. The robot had never been defeated like this before. It wasn't supposed to be possible. But Lily had done it. She had made the impossible possible. The alien leader's expression turned from amusement to shock. His eyes narrowed. This human girl wasn't what he had expected. She wasn't just surviving. She was fighting back. The robot staggered again, and Lily didn't hesitate. She knew this was her chance. With one swift, powerful kick, she knocked the robot off balance, sending it crashing to the ground. The arena shook with the impact, and a cheer went up from the crowd. An unexpected cheer. The alien leader clenched his fists, clearly frustrated. "Impossible," he muttered, his voice low and threatening. "You should have fallen by now." But Lily didn't care about his words. She had just proven that she could outsmart this enemy. She could survive. As she stood over the robot's fallen body, panting and covered in sweat, the alien leader took a step forward. His gaze was cold, but there was something else in it now. Respect, perhaps, or maybe fear. Either way, Lily had earned his attention, and that was enough to send a chill down his spine. The crowd, once mocking, was now silent. They were watching a human girl, small, fragile, and yet she had just done what no one thought possible. She had beaten the robot, and in doing so, she had proven that humans were not to be underestimated. Not now, not ever. The alien leader turned to his warriors, his voice full of anger. "Prepare the next challenge," he growled. But his words lacked the confidence they had once had. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The test begins. The arena was silent. The echoes of the robot's fall still rang in the air, but Lily didn't allow herself to feel any relief. She knew the fight wasn't over. The aliens had no intention of letting her go free. They would never let a scrawny human girl defeat their prized champion without paying a price. The alien leader stepped forward, his tall, imposing figure casting a shadow over Lily. His red eyes glowed with a mix of anger and calculation. "You may have beaten our robot, human," he growled, his voice like a grinding of metal. "But that was nothing. Now you face us." The alien warriors, each one bigger and stronger than the last, lined up behind their leader. They weren't just skilled fighters. They were legends across the galaxy. They had never been bested in combat. And now, they were about to show the human girl what true strength was. Lily's pulse quickened. She hadn't expected this. She thought defeating the robot would be the end of it. But this was the beginning of something far more dangerous. She had no weapons, no armor. Just her wits, her agility, and the will to survive. But she wasn't afraid. Not now. Not after what she had already faced. She had survived the robot. She had beaten it using nothing but her mind and her resourcefulness. And she would do the same now. She had no choice. The alien leader raised a hand, signaling the start of the next challenge. The arena walls shimmered, and massive platforms rose from the ground, creating a maze of obstacles that Lily would have to navigate. This wasn't just a fight. It was a test of survival. And she was the prey. "Let the challenge begin," the alien leader bellowed. Lily's heart hammered in her chest, but she pushed her fear aside. She didn't have time to think about how impossible this seemed. She had to move to act. The moment she hesitated, she would be finished. As the platforms shifted, the alien warriors took their positions. They weren't just going to fight her. They were going to hunt her. Their eyes glowed with a predatory gleam, and their massive forms moved with purpose. They were trained to track down and defeat enemies like her, and they were good at it. Lily scanned the arena. She couldn't fight them head-on. She knew that much. These aliens were strong, each one capable of tearing her apart with a single blow. She had to use the environment, just like she had done with the robot. Her eyes landed on a raised platform in the distance. It was far, but it was her best chance. If she could get there, she'd have an advantage. An elevated position where the aliens would have a harder time reaching her. It was risky, but it was all she had. Without a second thought, she sprinted toward the platform, her feet pounding against the cold, metallic floor. The alien warriors followed, their heavy footsteps echoing behind her. The sound of their pursuit was deafening, and Lily's heart raced in her chest. She could hear them getting closer. She could almost feel the heat of their breath on her neck. But Lily didn't slow down. She kept her eyes fixed on the platform. She had to get there before they did. As she neared the platform, one of the aliens, taller and faster than the others, lunged toward her. His clawed hand swiped at her, aiming for her neck. Lily dodged just in time, feeling the air rush past her as the alien's claws barely missed. The sound of them scraping against the metal floor sent a chill down her spine. She didn't dare look back. She couldn't afford to. Instead, she pushed herself harder, her legs burning as she raced up the incline of the platform. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but she didn't stop. She reached the top, barely escaping the alien's reach. For a moment, she was safe. The warriors couldn't reach her up here. Not yet. She had a few seconds to breathe, to think. But as she looked around, her moment of relief was short-lived. The arena was full of traps and obstacles, giant mechanical arms that swung down from the ceiling, spiked barriers that rose from the floor. The aliens weren't just hunting her. They had designed the arena to make sure she couldn't escape. Every turn was a potential death trap. Lily's eyes scanned the arena, trying to find a way out. She had to think fast. Every second counted. If she stayed in one place for too long, the aliens would find a way to flush her out. A massive mechanical arm swung down from the ceiling, aiming to crush her under its weight. Without thinking, Lily jumped, her feet barely grazing the ground as she rolled to the side. The arm missed by inches, smashing into the floor where she had been standing just moments before. The force of the impact shook the ground beneath her, and Lily felt the vibrations all the way through her body. She scrambled to her feet, her heart racing. The aliens were closing in. They were getting closer with every passing moment. But this time, Lily wasn't just running. She was thinking. And she was ready. As another alien leaped toward her, Lily spotted her chance. She darted behind one of the large pillars in the arena, using it as cover. The alien crashed into the pillar, its massive body causing the ground to tremble. But Lily had already moved again, disappearing into the shadows. The aliens couldn't track her if they couldn't see her. For a moment, the crowd fell silent. They had expected this to be a quick, brutal fight. But instead, they were watching the human girl outsmarting their greatest warriors. It was impossible, but it was happening. Lily's mind raced as she continued to evade the aliens, using the environment to her advantage. She wasn't just a small, fragile human. She was a survivor. The alien leader's voice boomed across the arena. Find her. Hunt her down. But it was clear that even he was starting to lose faith in his warriors. They were strong, but they weren't clever. And that's what Lily had over them. Her ability to think, to adapt, to survive. As the alien warriors closed in on her, Lily knew that the real test was just beginning. She couldn't hide forever. She would have to face them eventually. But when that time came, she would be ready. And she would make them regret ever underestimating a human girl. A glimpse of power. Lily crouched behind a jagged pillar of alien metal, her breath coming in shallow, quick gasps. Sweat dripped down her face, but her mind was sharp. She knew the aliens were closing in, their heavy footsteps and guttural growls echoing through the arena. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. It was a game, and she was the prize. From her hiding spot, she could see the glowing eyes of one of the warriors scanning the area. He was massive, his muscular frame covered in armor that shimmered with a faint alien light. His claws twitched, eager for the moment he would strike. But Lily wasn't going to let him have that chance. Her eyes darted to a series of pipes running along the arena wall. Steam hissed from cracks in their surface, creating a low, ominous hum. If she could get to those pipes, she might be able to use them against her pursuers. It was risky, but she didn't have another option. The warrior moved closer, his growls louder now. Lily's fingers tightened around a loose shard of metal she had grabbed earlier, a makeshift weapon. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. She waited, her muscles coiled like a spring, ready to move. The warrior stepped past her hiding spot, his back turned. This was her moment. Lily darted out, silent and quick, and bolted toward the pipes. The warrior roared in surprise, spinning around to chase her. His claws raked the air just inches behind her as she zigzagged, making herself a harder target. The other warriors, alerted by the commotion, joined the hunt, their thunderous footsteps closing in. The pipes loomed ahead, their metallic surface slick with moisture. Lily reached them and quickly scrambled up, climbing higher to stay out of reach. The warriors hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to follow her. They weren't built for climbing. They were built for brute strength. Lily grinned despite the fear twisting in her gut. "You're big, but you're slow." From her perch, she noticed something. The pipes were old, corroded in places where the steam had eaten away at the metal. If she could rupture them, the blast of steam might buy her some time, but she needed to act fast. The warriors growled below, their claws scraping the walls as they tried to climb after her. Lily glanced around, spotting a loose valve near the top of the pipes. If she could open it, the pressure inside would burst the weakest points. The largest warrior leaped, his claws catching the edge of the pipe just beneath her. His strength shook the entire structure, and Lily nearly lost her grip. She kicked at him, her boot connecting with his hand. He snarled, but his grip slipped, and he fell back with a deafening crash. The crowd roared in a mix of shock and excitement. They had never seen their warriors struggle like this. The alien leader's expression darkened, his glowing eyes narrowing as he watched the human girl defy every expectation. Lily didn't waste any time. She reached the valve and twisted it with all her strength. At first, it didn't budge, but then it gave way with a loud creak. The pipes beneath her began to shudder, the pressure building rapidly. "Get down from there," one of the warriors bellowed, his voice full of rage. But Lily wasn't about to listen. She scrambled higher, climbing just out of reach as the pipes erupted. A deafening hiss filled the arena as scalding steam shot out in every direction. The warriors below howled in pain, their armor sizzling as the steam burned through it. The crowd gasped, their excitement turning to awe. They had never seen anything like this. A human, tiny, fragile, and unarmed, had just turned their own arena against them. Lily clung to the top of the pipes, her chest heaving, as she watched the chaos below. The warriors were disoriented, their confidence shattered. They had underestimated her, and now they were paying the price. But Lily knew this wasn't over. The alien leader stepped forward, his expression cold and unreadable. "Enough games," he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "You've proven you can think, human. But now, let's see if you can truly fight." The ground beneath the arena shifted, and Lily's stomach dropped as a massive platform rose from the center. It was covered in spikes and glowing rooms, radiating an ominous energy. The alien leader stepped onto the platform, his towering form casting a shadow across the arena. "You've impressed me," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "But this is where your luck ends. I'll show you what true power looks like." Lily's heart hammered in her chest, but she pushed her fear aside. She didn't have time to think about how impossible this seemed. She had to move to act. The moment she hesitated, she would be finished. As the platforms shifted, the alien warriors took their positions. They weren't just going to fight her. They were going to hunt her. Their eyes glowed with a predatory gleam, and their massive forms moved with purpose. They were trained to track down and defeat enemies like her, and they were good at it. Lily scanned the arena. She couldn't fight them head-on. She knew that much. These aliens were strong, each one capable of tearing her apart with a single blow. She had to use the environment, just like she had done with the robot. Her eyes landed on a raised platform in the distance. It was far, but it was her best chance. If she could get there, she'd have an advantage. An elevated position where the aliens would have a harder time reaching her. It was risky, but it was all she had. Without a second thought, she sprinted toward the platform, her feet pounding against the cold, metallic floor. The alien warriors followed, their heavy footsteps echoing behind her. The sound of their pursuit was deafening, and Lily's heart raced in her chest. She could hear them getting closer. She could almost feel the heat of their breath on her neck. But Lily didn't slow down. She kept her eyes fixed on the platform. She had to get there before they did. As she neared the platform, one of the aliens, taller and faster than the others, lunged toward her. His clawed hand swiped at her, aiming for her neck. Lily dodged just in time, feeling the air rush past her as the alien's claws barely missed. The sound of them scraping against the metal floor sent a chill down her spine. She didn't dare look back. She couldn't afford to. Instead, she pushed herself harder, her legs burning as she raced up the incline of the platform. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but she didn't stop. She reached the top, barely escaping the alien's reach. For a moment, she was safe. The warriors couldn't reach her up here. Not yet. She had a few seconds to breathe, to think. But as she looked around, her moment of relief was short-lived. The arena was full of traps and obstacles, giant mechanical arms that swung down from the ceiling, spiked barriers that rose from the floor. The aliens weren't just hunting her. They had designed the arena to make sure she couldn't escape. Every turn was a potential death trap. Lily's eyes scanned the arena, trying to find a way out. She had to think fast. Every second counted. If she stayed in one place for too long, the aliens would find a way to flush her out. A massive mechanical arm swung down from the ceiling, aiming to crush her under its weight. Without thinking, Lily jumped, her feet barely grazing the ground as she rolled to the side. The arm missed by inches, smashing into the floor where she had been standing just moments before. The force of the impact shook the ground beneath her, and Lily felt the vibrations all the way through her body. She scrambled to her feet, her heart racing. The aliens were closing in. They were getting closer with every passing moment. But this time, Lily wasn't just running. She was thinking. And she was ready. As another alien leaped toward her, Lily spotted her chance. She darted behind one of the large pillars in the arena, using it as cover. The alien crashed into the pillar, its massive body causing the ground to tremble. But Lily had already moved again, disappearing into the shadows. The aliens couldn't track her if they couldn't see her. For a moment, the crowd fell silent. They had expected this to be a quick, brutal fight. But instead, they were watching the human girl outsmarting their greatest warriors. It was impossible, but it was happening. Lily's mind raced as she continued to evade the aliens, using the environment to her advantage. She wasn't just a small, fragile human. She was a survivor. The alien leader's voice boomed across the arena. Find her. Hunt her down. But it was clear that even he was starting to lose faith in his warriors. They were strong, but they weren't clever. And that's what Lily had over them: her ability to think, to adapt, to survive. As the alien warriors closed in on her, Lily knew that the real test was just beginning. She couldn't hide forever. She would have to face them eventually. But when that time came, she would be ready. And she would make them regret ever underestimating a human girl. Sparks erupted, and the leader bellowed in rage. His blade faltered, the light dimming as the energy in his armor surged erratically. The crowd gasped, their cheers turning to murmurs of disbelief. No one had ever injured their leader before. "You little," the leader growled, but his words were cut off as Lily rolled away, keeping her distance. She wasn't going to stand still and let him recover. She grabbed a loose piece of the shattered platform, a jagged metal rod, and held it like a spear. "Looks like I hit a nerve," Lily called, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. She wasn't taunting him for fun. She was trying to keep his focus on her movements, to make him angry, reckless. The leader roared again, charging toward her with all his might. This time, Lily was ready. She waited until the last possible moment, and then threw the metal rod with every ounce of strength she had. It wasn't perfect, but it struck the flickering joint again, sending another burst of sparks flying. The leader stumbled, his armor crackling as the energy within it became unstable. The ground beneath them began to shake as the leader's own power started to backfire. His blade dimmed completely, the energy feeding it redirected into trying to stabilize his suit. But Lily wasn't going to give him that chance. She climbed higher, scaling the platforms as fast as she could. The leader tried to follow, but his movements were slower now, his steps heavy and uneven. He reached for her, but she was out of reach, her small size giving her an advantage in the narrow spaces between the jagged structures. The crowd was on their feet now, their cheers turning into shouts of disbelief. They had come to watch a human fail. Instead, they were watching her dismantle their leader, piece by piece. Finally, Lily reached the highest point in the arena, a narrow ledge with a sharp broken spike jutting upward. She positioned herself carefully, waiting for the leader to make his move. He climbed after her, his armor sparking and hissing with every step. His glowing eyes burned with fury. "You think this will stop me?" he growled, his voice ragged but still menacing. "No," Lily said, her voice calm. "But this will." As the leader lunged at her, Lily jumped aside, using the last of her strength to grab the spike and pull herself to safety. The leader's momentum carried him forward, straight into the jagged metal. His armor gave a deafening screech as it pierced through him, and the crowd fell silent. For a moment, everything was still. The leader staggered, his glowing eyes dimming. He turned to Lily, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "You, insignificant." But before he could finish, his suit's energy finally failed. With a final burst of sparks, he collapsed, the platform shaking under his weight. Lily stood above him, breathing hard, her hands trembling. She had done it. She had brought down the most powerful warrior in the arena. And in that moment, she realized something. They weren't just underestimating her anymore. They were afraid of her. He charged, his massive weapon swinging toward her with brutal force. Lily dove to the side, the blade slicing through the air where she had been standing. The platform shook from the impact, and Lily barely managed to keep her footing. "You're just a child," the general sneered. "A weak, fragile little thing. Why do you even fight?" Lily's eyes narrowed. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for something bigger, for every human who had ever been underestimated, dismissed, or mocked. She wasn't going to let them think of her as weak. Not now. Not ever. "You don't understand," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Humans don't fight because we're strong. We fight because we have to." The general hesitated for a fraction of a second, caught off guard by her words. It was all Lily needed. She darted forward, slamming her metal shard into the exposed joint of his armor. Sparks flew as the shard struck true, and the general roared in pain, staggering backward. But the other warriors weren't going to wait. They surged forward, their weapons raised, their eyes glowing with determination. Lily's heart raced as she realized she was surrounded. There was no way out, no way to win. And then she saw it. Above her, the arena's energy core, a massive glowing structure suspended from the ceiling, hummed with power. It was the source of the arena's traps, the weapons, the very platform beneath her feet. If she could damage it, disrupt its flow, she might stand a chance. But getting there would mean climbing through the chaos, dodging the relentless attacks of the alien warriors. Lily didn't hesitate. She turned and sprinted toward the nearest pillar, her small frame weaving through the chaos. The warriors lunged after her, their weapons slamming into the ground and sending shockwaves that nearly knocked her off her feet. She didn't stop. She couldn't. The climb was brutal. The pillars were slick with condensation, and her hands were raw from gripping the sharp edges. The warriors shouted in frustration below, their massive forms too bulky to follow her. But they weren't giving up. Instead, they began throwing their weapons, energy blades and spears slicing through the air. One blade grazed her arm, searing her skin with a burst of heat. She cried out in pain but kept climbing, her determination outweighing the agony. The energy core was just above her now, its hum growing louder with each passing second. The alien general roared from below. "You'll never make it. We'll tear you apart before you can touch it." Lily ignored him. She reached the core, her fingers brushing against the smooth, glowing surface. It pulsed with energy, the vibrations running up her arms. She had no idea how to disable it. She wasn't an engineer or a soldier, but she didn't need to understand it. She just needed to destroy it. Gripping her shard tightly, she slammed it into the core with all her remaining strength. The reaction was instant. The core crackled and sparked, its glow flickering wildly. The arena trembled, the platforms shaking as the energy flow became unstable. The warriors below froze, their expressions shifting from rage to panic. They realized what was happening. The core was destabilizing, and if it went, the entire arena would collapse. Lily climbed down as quickly as she could, her body screaming in protest. She reached the ground just as the first explosion ripped through the arena. The crowd erupted into chaos, aliens scrambling to escape as the structure began to fall apart. The alien general stood amidst the chaos, his face a mask of disbelief. "What have you done?" he shouted. Lily straightened, her body battered but her spirit unbroken. She met his gaze, her voice steady and unwavering. "I just leveled the playing field." The ground beneath them cracked, and the platform gave way, sending the general plunging into the abyss below. Lily barely managed to grab hold of a ledge, pulling herself up with the last of her strength. The arena was in ruins, the once proud structure reduced to rubble. The warriors had fled, and the crowd had dispersed, their cheers replaced by silence. Lily stood alone, battered and bruised but victorious. For the first time, the galaxy's most feared warriors had been brought to their knees, not by strength, but by the resilience of a human girl who refused to give up mercy or triumph. Lily stood amid the smoking wreckage of the arena, her small frame silhouetted against the chaos she had unleashed. The once mighty warriors, feared across the galaxy, now lay scattered, broken, and defeated. Their leader was gone, the energy core shattered, and the structure that symbolized their dominance was crumbling into ruin. But it wasn't over. From the far end of the arena, a handful of warriors staggered to their feet. Their armor was scorched, their movements sluggish, but their pride pushed them forward. They gathered before Lily, their towering forms casting long shadows across the fractured ground. She gripped her shard tightly, prepared for one final stand. Then, to her shock, they dropped to their knees. The lead warrior, a scared, imposing figure, lowered his head. His voice, deep and gravelly, broke the tense silence. "We surrender," he said, the words heavy with humiliation. You have defeated us, human. What do you want? Lily's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. She had fought to survive, to prove that she wasn't as weak as they thought, but she had never imagined this moment. They were asking her for mercy. She took a step forward, her legs trembling. The warriors flinched slightly, expecting her to lash out. Instead, she lowered her weapon, her eyes scanning their faces. For the first time, they looked less like monsters and more like soldiers, beaten, desperate, and unsure of what would happen next. "I don't want revenge," Lily said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I didn't come here to destroy you. I came here because you forced me to. You treated me like I was nothing, like my life didn't matter. But now you know, humans aren't weak. We fight because we have to, because we don't give up. And we don't bow to anyone." The warriors exchanged uneasy glances, their pride warring with the undeniable truth in her words. The lead warrior bowed his head further, his voice low. "You have earned our respect, human, more than we deserve." The crowd, once rowdy and bloodthirsty, had gathered silently around the wreckage. The aliens who had mocked her, who had jeered and laughed, now stood in stunned silence. Some looked away, ashamed. Others watched her with a newfound reverence, as though seeing her for the first time. Lily turned to the remnants of the audience, her voice rising. "You thought humans were weak because we're smaller, because we're not as fast or as strong as you. But strength isn't just about muscles or weapons. It's about heart. It's about refusing to give up, even when the odds are against you." Her words echoed through the ruined arena, carried by the wind. The aliens shifted uncomfortably, the weight of her defiance cutting through their arrogance. One by one, they began to bow, not out of fear, but out of respect. The alien leader's second in command, a younger warrior with sharp, piercing eyes, stepped forward hesitantly. His voice was soft, uncertain. "What will you do now? You've defeated us. The arena is yours." Lily looked at the rubble, at the broken symbols of power and control that had defined this place. She thought about the countless others who had been brought here, treated as prey, stripped of their dignity. She thought about how easily she could walk away, leaving them to sort out the chaos she had caused. But that wasn't who she was. "I don't want your arena," she said, her voice firm. "But I do want change. No more games, no more challenges that cost lives for your entertainment. If you want to prove your strength, do it by building something that matters, not by tearing others down." The second in command nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "You ask for much," he said, "but you have shown us what true strength looks like. Perhaps it's time we learned from you." The crowd murmured in agreement, the weight of Lily's words sinking in. She had done more than survive. She had changed the way they saw her, the way they saw humanity. And in doing so, she had planted the seeds of something far greater. As the aliens began to disperse, Lily felt the tension in her body finally ease. She was exhausted, her injuries catching up with her, but she stood tall. She had faced the impossible and won, not just through strength, but through resilience, determination, and heart. One of the warriors approached her hesitantly, his head bowed. He held out a small device, a communication beacon. "Take this," he said. "If you ever need allies, call us. You've earned our loyalty." Lily accepted the device, her hand shaking slightly. She nodded, too tired to say much more, but the gesture spoke volumes. She had turned enemies into allies, and in doing so, she had proven that humanity's strength wasn't in its weapons or its size. It was in its ability to inspire, to adapt, and to endure. As she walked away from the ruins of the arena, the wind carrying the ashes of what once was, Lily knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and dangers, but she also knew something else. The universe would never underestimate humanity again.